Welcome back to the Grateful Ducks tail. Whoa, wrong show. Don't come back. Welcome back to the Grateful Ducks tailgate. That will be on Friday. Welcome back to the Grateful Ducks podcast episode. I don't know what episode this is. I don't really keep track of them like some people would. Um, this is week 6 of the college football season. Today is Wednesday, October 9th. On today's episode, we recap week 6 and we tune into a certain matchup in Eugene uh, this Saturday night that we will be talking about. And then we will tune in. You're going to have to tune in as well on Friday morning for a special Grateful Ducks tailgate episode a little bit earlier in the week. Not doing it Saturday morning, not doing it Friday night. So you're going to have to tune in Friday morning live at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, where we'll go dive into all of week 7 games of the week. Boy, is it a big week. I am excited about this weekend's games. It is about to get real this week. But before we get to that, we got to talk about week 6. Holy smokes, was that fun. Upsets everywhere. Kind of had a sense that was going to be the case, or could have been the case with some trap games from certain teams looking ahead, or other teams coming off a big win and then getting into another game after that big win and having a hard time refocusing, and whatever the other reasons might have been that led to the big upset loss this week. So we've got to start out with that the biggest one of the week. Vanderbilt football is back. I don't know that it was ever here. So let's just call it this. Vanderbilt football has arrived. Clark Lee has done a phenomenal job in year 4 as head coach for Vanderbilt now. Got to give a little bit of credit to him getting into the transfer portal and getting Diego Pavia from New Mexico State. What did Diego Pavia do last year at New Mexico State? He went to Auburn and beat Auburn at Auburn in a big road win at New Mexico State. They also brought in Diego Pavia's offensive coordinator, and they also brought in Diego Pavia's former head coach, Jerry Kill. All of these things really have been meshing well with Vanderbilt football and that offense. The defense did a phenomenal job there and did what they had to do. They were in the game the whole way. You really have to pay attention to this football team. Their schedule gets tougher down the stretch here, but just taking down Bama. First time having a top 10 or top 5 win as a program against a top 5 opponent. You have to look back, and they in week 1 beat Virginia Tech in overtime. They took Missouri to double overtime just the week before. So this is a really good program. And Clark Lee says, we're just getting started. So I'm really excited to see what they could do. Hopefully these upsets become more of the norm and just big wins for this program moving forward, because, man, that was fun to see. The other highlight from that game, this is my favorite picture of the weekend. I like to try to highlight some of the pictures from the weekend that was. Obviously, we got to talk about the fans rushing the field against Alabama, number 1 team in the country that they took down in Nashville. What do? You tear down the goalpost and you go honky-tonking down Broadway Street with those goalposts. They carried that all the way from Vanderbilt's campus. So I don't know if any of you listening have ever been to Nashville, but the campus is probably a good 2 to 3 mile walk away from downtown Nashville. So they tore down the goalpost. Not only did they storm the field, they stormed Broadway Street. And then they threw that goalpost into the Cumberland River. There was a rescue mission later on to get the goalpost back. I believe I saw something about Vanderbilt. I don't know if the school or somebody is putting together um, merch or souvenir stuff from the stadium from this game and selling it online as memorabilia. So I don't know. It could be grass from the field. It could be parts of the goalpost that was saved later on. It could be seats. It could be souvenir cups. I don't know. I saw that they are putting together some sales though for this big win, biggest win in the history of Vanderbilt football. Vanderbilt football is a thing now, and I think this is just so cool to see. Well deserved by that program to finally see. I mean, they've had some upsets over the last couple of years against SEC opponents, but they can't really get over that hump. Their win total projections were 2.5 on the season. They're already over that. They should be able to get another 1 or 2 wins there. Maybe they get to 6 wins and they become bowl eligible, but their schedule really still becomes a challenge. But they've got all the confidence in the world now. They're not going to be able to sneak up on anybody after nearly upsetting Missouri and then taking down the number 1 team in the country. Some other big upsets. Tennessee goes to Arkansas and loses on the road to Arkansas. Big win for Sam Pittman and Arkansas. Arkansas, they embraced the hog. They stepped up. That defense found a way to shut down Nico and that high-powered offense. And Arkansas's offense, credit to them and that offensive line, they played a great game, had a phenomenal game plan, and did what they had to do to scheme and beat that high-powered Tennessee D-line and that Tennessee defense. And then you had Texas A&M and Missouri. This was not very much of a game. This was one-sided from the get-go. Texas A&M from the gun just absolutely boat raced Missouri. That was one of my predictions. I said 3 undefeated teams would go down this week. Turns out 6 undefeated teams went down. And we're going to have another undefeated team lose this week. We're going to talk about that later on. We will talk about that a lot on the Friday Grateful Ducks tailgate episode at 9:30 a.m. Friday morning. Tune in then live. But Mizzou is starting to look like a team that had a lot of preseason hype, and they just are not quite looking like that same Missouri team that snuck up on people last year and surprised. I think Brady Cook does not look the same. He's struggled. I don't know what's going on with him. Luther Burden is kind of out there on an island because Brady Cook is not looking as strong as he has been. The running game without Cody Schrader has not looked as solid, and the defense is definitely underperforming. Now they have the new offensive coordinator that came in, but they still return a lot of the same people on both sides of the ball. And I can't quite figure out what is wrong with Missouri, but they are definitely showing with these last 2 weeks, especially that, they just got to hold on and hope that they could be a bowl eligible team and maybe get to sneak into the playoff. But right now they are really looking on the outside of the 12 playoff teams pretty significantly now. SMU bounces back in a big way to take down Louisville. That was a big win, made a statement on the road. I was very high on Louisville early in the year. Now they've lost to Notre Dame and SMU. So that's 2 losses for them. They will have to find a way to climb the way back up into the ACC standings to somehow get into that ACC championship game, because you still have Clemson and you have Miami there that are clearly the better 2 teams. Speaking of Miami, not sure how many people stayed up late night to watch that Clemson or the Miami Cal game, but boy, did it not look good for Miami. And that's 2 weeks in a row now that Miami has looked beatable. They had to claw their way back and hold on to win on one of the last drives of the game. We will see how Miami responds moving forward. That's 2 weeks, not 2 straight weeks where they were able to win. They are still undefeated. They still are one of the best teams in the country. But I think there's a gap between some of the better teams in the country and Miami, even though they don't have a loss next to their record. They have -0 still on their record. I just don't see them being better than the teams ahead of them in the rankings, and I don't think that'll change. The ACC and the way the rankings are playing out, they look like they will be if they win the ACC, they'll still get a first round bye in the playoff, but I think there's plenty of teams that won't get a bye that could potentially take care of Miami without an issue. Two of them play each other this weekend. Did you know that? Yeah, it's a big game this weekend. Um, Nebraska Rutgers, another undefeated team, goes down. It was a classic Big Ten Big Ten game. Dylan Raiola looked okay. 14-7. Nebraska beats Rutgers. Nebraska, being the home team in this situation, takes on that undefeated Rutgers team. Rutgers having a very good year. The Nebraska defense found the formula to stop and contain Kyle Monangai, and when you do that, Rutgers has to find other ways to win the game, and Nebraska did just enough there to handle Rutgers. Another big one: USC travels to Minnesota and loses on the road to Minnesota. So now USC has two Big Ten losses, both on the road, one to Michigan and one to Minnesota. It now seems like they are very much on the outside looking in at the playoff, and maybe they find their way back into a Big Ten championship game as a two-loss team. But if a third loss, and they're not going to be playing for a Big Ten championship, they got to really hope that as a three-loss team, they could have enough on their resume to show the committee that they deserve to be a playoff team. But I don't think Michigan is the same old Michigan of the last 3 to 4 years. And now losing to Minnesota, who is pretty okay, is not going to really help their cause. They essentially have to win out and hope that there's enough chaos within the Big Ten to get them back into a Big Ten championship game, and that there's other help from the rest of the country to get them as a two-loss team into the college football playoff. I just doubt it happens. Okay. And last but not least, not a lot of playoff implications here, but just another game that I predicted would be an upset. Syracuse, the ACC team, travels to Vegas, takes down the undefeated UNLV. Former Ohio State quarterback Kyle McCord, who I talked about pretty highly ever since he has transferred to Syracuse, had a phenomenal game. He looks like maybe Ohio State should have let him stay there. And part of it could be the offense is a better fit for him and playing in that system. But I tell you what, if you had to ask me today, who would I rather have running Ohio State's offense, Kyle McCord or Will Howard? I mean, it's early still. We haven't seen a lot from Ohio State's offense. We'll talk about that this weekend. I think Kyle McCord has shown that he's the better option. And there's reasons why he left. He was kind of told, we can't guarantee that you're going to get the starting job here. We're looking at other options. They wanted to go a different direction with the offense, and he wasn't in the cards for Ohio State. But going on the road, defeating a undefeated UNLV team in overtime on the road, very nice job by Syracuse, moving to 4-2 on the year, looking like a team that's on the right track to become bowl eligible within these next few weeks. So that's my quick recap from last week's big games. Moving on, let's go and take a visit to the AP poll, shall we? Let me see. Okay, so let's dive right into it here. We just talked about SMU moving up into the rankings after being unranked at number 25. Then we have Michigan drops all the way down to number 24. Whew. So Michigan will now be on a bye week this week, and they face a team ahead of them, Illinois, Fighting Illini. after their bye week. So that's going to be an interesting game. Illinois moving up one spot up to 23. They are now 4-1 on the year. They get Purdue this weekend. Let's face it, that's not going to be much of a game. Purdue is in shambles. Their head coach, Ryan Walters, he might not make it through the season. If he makes it through the season, I think they are going to send him packing. You can't just continue to get blown out week by week by week. You got to have some close games in there somewhere. And man, is it ugly. It's not getting any better. I'm looking forward to this game in 2 weeks. Illinois, like I said, should take care of business. They can't get caught in a look-ahead game to Michigan, but really, Michigan's fortunate to be ranked at this point, being 4-2, had that loss to Texas, and then you lost on the road to Washington now. Washington's looking a lot better. Credit to them coming back and winning on the road. But it's just not the same Michigan like we've talked about. Some other teams down at the bottom there. Other teams receiving votes. USC still getting some votes, dropped from the rankings, though. Nebraska's on the rise. Navy and Army. Talk about a couple surprises. Both of those teams are still undefeated. You could see Army Navy if that trend continues. It's possible you see the two of them competing in the American Conference Championship, and then the week after championship weekend, they have Army Navy round 2 in the Army Navy game. This is unheard of, unprecedented territory. We will see. I don't think it's going to happen, but man, that would be hilarious. It'd be great for the game to see Army Navy for a conference championship, followed by playing in the Army Navy game a week later. And Navy could score. They're not just doing your triple option classic Navy stuff anymore. They're throwing the ball. They're passing. They got a great passing game. Their defense is still solid. I've been very impressed with them. I would not sleep on Memphis in that conference, however. Okay, let's move up to the next tier here. See how many I can get on my screen. Pitt moves into the rankings there. After being unranked, they are 5-0 in the ACC. A little bit of a sleeper team. They get Cal at home this weekend. Cal is traveling over 3 time zones. That's going to be a challenge there. And then you get Mizzou with the loss to Texas A&M, dropped all the way to 21. That's probably where they belong. Heavy favorites against UMass. UMass gave NIU a good run in their game this past weekend, and now they get another SEC opponent. Credit to UMass with one of the toughest schedules in the entire country. They're starting to battle week in and week out, and they're not going to win. But could they cover? I believe the last I saw it was like a 27-point line. I would think that they could hopefully stay within that line, at least maybe for a half. I'll look into it a little more. Oklahoma moves up one spot. The big game this week, and we'll talk about that on Friday morning. The Red River rivalry. Oklahoma and Texas. This Saturday at 2:30 Central Time, 3:30 Eastern. I don't know what channel it's on. That's for the tailgate episode in a couple weeks. Indiana moves up to. Is that right? We have a 3-way tie for 18th in the rankings. That's lame as fuck. Come on, make up your minds, AP. Indiana's ranked. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break this rankings tie right now. Okay, Boise State at number 17. It should be Indiana at 18, Kansas State at 19, Oklahoma at 20. Okay, there, it's done. You don't get to have a 3-way tie in the rankings. That's some bizarre shit. You're not going to have 3 teams. You're not going to have 3 teams tied for the same rankings in the college football playoff. Like, make up your mind. Indiana's the best team of these 3. They have a bye week this week, and then they have Nebraska at home. They're on track to, like I said last week, maybe 7-0, 8-0, could be 9-0 into the Ohio State and Michigan games after that. Curt Cignetti said when he got the job they were going to come back to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they pull that off. Now we got to talk about Boise State. Ashton Jeanty looked like he only played about 2.5 quarters of the game, and he ran for 186 rushing yards and had, I don't know, 3 touchdowns still in before halftime. So now that with Alabama losing and Boise State moving up to number 17 in the rankings, and Ashton Jeanty already over 1,000 yards rushing on the season, he's the Heisman favorite. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, but he is well deserved to belong in New York, like I talked about last episode. Not much as far as Heisman talk this week. It's right now it's Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter, and I think, like I said, if I was a Heisman voter, I'm voting for I'm voting for Travis Hunter, and I think Ashton Jeanty gets a vote on the ballot, and he should be in New York. But it's going to Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter right now. We will talk about other Heisman candidates in another episode, because I think there's one that is a little bit further down the list that if you like an outcome of a certain game this weekend and you think a certain team is going to win a certain game this weekend, if you think that certain team is going to win this certain game this weekend and you are going to bet on that game this weekend, I would suggest maybe looking at the Heisman odds and looking at a value play there. If you think this certain team is going to win this certain game, okay, look a little bit further down the Heisman odds, not the top 2 or 3, maybe like in the 5 to 7 to 8 range, somewhere around there. Because there's a Heisman contender there that hasn't looked the greatest in the last couple of games, but that name still is surfacing back towards the top of the Heisman contender list. And there's some good value on that if you want to look at some different betting lines for this weekend, but also include that in future plays. Moving on, Utah, Texas A&M, BYU, LSU on another bullshit tie. What the fuck is with this tie? I'm going to break this tie right now. Okay. Iowa State is undefeated. They're ranked number 11. Notre Dame has one loss to a school from the MAC. They're 4-1. Iowa State is 11. Notre Dame is 12. It's that simple. Look it down. LSU remains unchanged. They got a big game on Saturday night in Baton Rouge, in Death Valley, as they call it, against Ole Miss. I'm excited to watch that game. We'll talk all about it. I don't know how much of that game I'll be able to watch. I'm going to be tuned into a different game. BYU undefeated in the Big 12. Cool, great, whatever. It's the Big 12. It does nothing for me. I would not rank them all the way up at 14. I'd put them a little bit further down the list. I would definitely move Texas A&M above BYU, LSU, Notre Dame, and then slightly behind Iowa State. And then you have Clemson working their way back up into the top 10. They're kind of settling back in now, and they took care of business with Florida State. It was close for a little bit early on, and then they just did what they needed to do to get through that game. Ole Miss at 9. Tennessee still at 8, remains in the top 10. That shows you how much voters respect Tennessee and that program and what they've done outside of that loss to Arkansas. They value that. Same thing with Alabama at number 7. I think they anticipate that those two teams will be okay. They still are SEC championship game contenders and playoff contenders as well. Moving up, let's see. Let's get to the top 6 now, okay? Miami at 6. I think there's a significant move. I take that back. I need to see more from Penn State, and I need to see more from them this weekend at USC. Again, Friday, Grateful Ducks tailgate episode. We will check in on that game and talk about some keys to the game there. Miami, Louisville is in 2 weeks. So Miami will be coming off a bye at Louisville. Louisville, 2 losses. I thought this game was going to be a much bigger game than Louisville now has lost to SMU and Notre Dame in consecutive weeks. So now I don't value that game as much. Georgia at number 5 remains at number 5. Meanwhile, Penn State moves to number 4. I could see that because they were still ranked so highly in the preseason rankings. I don't know that they are better than Miami, but I mean, we'll see what happens this weekend. Oh, Oregon, Ohio State. Would you look at that? They play each other this weekend. Did you guys know that? Oh, I knew that. We will get to that game shortly with a couple different storylines, and I'm going to call them quack ratings because I don't have a better name for that. And Texas moves back up to number 1 after the win last weekend, and Alabama losing. Texas moves from number 2 to number 1. Ohio State getting 9 first-place votes is a little surprising to me. I thought that number would be in the double digits and maybe into the 20s and be closer between Texas and Ohio State. That's how much I think people respect how well Texas has been doing. Okay, enough about the rankings. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about this game Saturday night from Eugene, Oregon, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time on NBC. Number 2 versus number 3. Probably the biggest game in the history of Autzen Stadium. Oregon's played in a lot of big bowl games, played for 2 national championships recently, made the college football playoff, done all that. The game at Autzen Stadium, this is probably the biggest game and has the highest implications as far as a game this early in the year. I would anticipate the crowd to break the attendance record this weekend for the game at Autzen Stadium. And that's my only prediction right now. There's a lot of keys to this game. I don't want to really get into the keys to this game because we're doing that on Friday. I still have to do some digging. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. I have no clue. The line opened up as Oregon a 4.5-point dog in Autzen Stadium. That's offensive as fuck. 4.5-point dogs, and the line's moved to 3. You tell me a primetime home dog plus 3 against Ohio State? I got a lot of. I'm not going to say that. Nope, not going to say that. I think this Ohio State team is. So I really think that people are looking at what happened to Oregon in week 1 against Idaho. They won. They struggled. The offensive line had some issues. And then
back. Okay. Dealt with some bullshit technical issues there. Lost the internet stream. It happens. Live TV. But we're still back. Here we go. Tune back in. We'll see if anybody's even fucking watching anymore. I doubt it. Whatever. That sucked. So we got a couple storylines to follow here with this week. I'm going to finish this episode off. Fuck you, internet. So first storyline to follow. In case you don't know, this is Chip Kelly. Okay. Former Oregon Ducks head coach. He got his start at Oregon. That was his first head coaching job. He moved on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Had some struggles with the San Francisco 49ers after being a head coach. Left the NFL, went to UCLA, was the head coach at UCLA, and then left UCLA. Left UCLA as head coach this past offseason to take the offensive coordinator position at Ohio State. Everybody knows Chip Kelly's famous offense for playing fast, playing high-powered, running a quick feed. Oregon knows him very well. Oregon fans love him. He did a lot for the program. Really appreciative of that. I'm not sure if he still owns a house in Eugene, but he will be able to help Ohio State prepare for Autzen Stadium as best he can. I don't know if he can truly describe the atmosphere and how loud it's going to be, but he can try to prepare him as best as he can, having all that experience with being at Autzen Stadium for all those years. Very intriguing storyline. He did face Dan Lanning at UCLA. Dan Lanning has seen his offense at UCLA, despite not having shown a lot of the offensive schemes this year because they haven't had to. Next up, speaking of Chip Kelly, this is Dante Moore, current Oregon Ducks backup quarterback. What was Dante Moore doing last year? He was starting games at UCLA under Chip Kelly. So a little bit of a chess match here. Dante Moore originally did commit to Oregon out of high school. And then he flipped his commitment to Chip Kelly and UCLA. And after 1 year, he did not like what was being done at UCLA and ended up transferring out of UCLA and committing to Oregon. All that happened while Chip Kelly was still head coach, and then Chip Kelly eventually did leave for the Ohio State offensive coordinator position. So I'm not saying Dante Moore is in the game this weekend. Knock on wood, Dylan Gabriel healthy. But I can tell you that he has been in Chip Kelly's offense. So not only has Oregon seen Chip Kelly's offense after facing them, they do have somebody that knows the offensive system very, very well, having played for Chip Kelly. That's something that I don't think enough people have really caught on to or really talked about yet. Maybe we'll hear that storyline a little bit later on down the road. You're hearing a lot about Chip Kelly and returning to Eugene, but nobody's really talking about how Dante Moore was the backup quarterback. Is the backup quarterback and did start under Chip Kelly 1 year ago. So go back to Chip Kelly on the quack ratings for the storyline. I give this 2 quacks. And God, that sounds dumb. I got to come up with a better thing than the quack ratings. And then I will give this storyline of Dante Moore 3 quacks because of the fact that he might have some intel and know a little bit of the wrinkles that Chip Kelly might be trying to draw up to share with their defensive coordinator. And the next one, this is current Ohio State running backs coach Carlos Locklyn. Okay? Carlos Locklyn last summer was the running backs coach at Oregon. I'm not sure the full story here, but there seemed to be a little bit of a falling out between Coach Locklyn and maybe the coaching staff at Oregon. It could have been a falling out between them and the players. I really am unsure. I do know that in the middle of Oregon killing the recruiting trail and prepping for this season, he left the team to take another job somewhere else and be in a Big Ten rival. or at least this could spill into becoming a big rivalry, especially this season. Carlos Loughlin, in my mind, is very hypocritical, and here's why. At one point last year, Oregon had a running back on their team who was on the depth chart, second or third. He was, would have been continuing to develop this year under Coach Loughlin at Oregon. Oregon signed some running backs in the transfer portal, and on signing day had some good commitments, and then other running backs are now healthy. This running back saw the writing on the wall that he was going to be a little bit buried on the depth chart and wanted to explore other opportunities at other programs and enter the transfer portal. He's now in Nebraska. Carlos Loughlin, just before this kid announces that he's entering the transfer portal, tweets out a GIF of a soft-baked batch cookie. Coach Loughlin, as he likes to be called, he doesn't like to be called Carlos. Don't call him Carlos. It's Coach Lock or Coach Loughlin. Don't call him Carlos. Would refer, my understanding is, to some of these running backs in the running back room as soft batch if they were to transfer. Then Coach Loughlin, as he likes to be called, leaves in the middle of summer to take another job. So, who's the soft batch cookie? I got a feeling, I have just a hunch that Oregon is going to run the absolute shit out of the ball this weekend and make a statement with Jordan James and Noah Whittington and Jaden Lamar. And Dylan Gabriel with some design runs. Just a hunch. I think Rashad Samples is going to be ready as the new and current running back coach for Oregon. I give this one a 4 quack rating out of 5. And last but not least, I don't have a picture for this. It's just an interesting storyline to follow. Anytime you have this high caliber of a game in the season, what are these coaches doing? They're bringing in the biggest name recruits for official visits. Where are these two teams in the recruiting battle? They're both top 5, top 10 in the country, these year in, year out. They are going to continue to battle, and Oregon winning this game would be a huge win on the recruiting trail because all the biggest names recruits are going to be there. Every single one of them is going to find their way there. And if Oregon loses, and if Oregon doesn't win, if Oregon finds a way that they don't win this game, then you've got Ohio State on the other sideline. And a lot of these recruits are also being recruited by Ohio State. So this could be a big swing in things for some of these recruits coming in to visit UG. We shall see. That'll do it for this week's edition of the Grateful Ducks podcast, not the tailgate, the Grateful Ducks podcast. Tune in Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. Central Time. We'll preview all of Week 7. We're going to go really in-depth on this Oregon-Ohio State game. There needs to be some sort of name or title for this game. I don't know what it is. Maybe you guys in the comments section have some suggestions. And just on a side note, serious note to everybody out in Florida, please be safe. Hopefully you've evacuated. Thoughts and prayers to all of you that are living out there, trying to visit out there. Stay safe. And as another plug, buy a Penguin Board Meets sweatshirt or hoodie. I'm going to end with that video once I find the video for it. And then I will see you on Wednesday at 9:30. Peace, and as always, Sko Ducks.